Welcome to this explainer. Let's just jump right in because today we're fundamentally shifting how we think about health and longevity. We're totally flipping the paradigm. You know how we all try to just miserably white-knuckle our way into getting healthy, relying on sheer willpower? Well, let's be honest, we've all been there, and it almost always fails. So instead, we're going to look at how building a solid architecture for your habits practically guarantees success. Okay, so let's dive into this massive disconnect. Why do 77% of us fail to stay healthy? Epidemiological data points out something pretty wild. 77% of adults report their general health as good or even very good. Yet as we cross into midlife, that exact same percentage, 77% of adults over 45, completely fail to meet basic physical activity guidelines. So we kind of think we're doing just fine, right? But our biological reality is telling a completely different story. And honestly, the broader statistics are just as shocking. According to the CDC's National Health Interview Survey, only 24.2% of U.S. adults actually meet both aerobic and muscle strengthening guidelines. Think about that. Just about a quarter of us. And to put it even more into perspective, over 46% of adults meet neither guideline at all. We're collectively failing to secure the basic biological benefits of movement. And spoiler alert here, it is definitely not because we're just lazy. Yeah, we love to blame laziness, but behavioral science reveals a completely different culprit. There's this concept from Stanford University called the fog behavior model, and it boils down to a super simple equation. Behavior equals motivation, ability, and a prompt. B equals MAP. The real problem? Motivation is notoriously flaky. It crashes when you're stressed or tired or just crazy busy. So when motivation inevitably takes a nosedive, the behavior only happens if your ability to do it is super high, meaning the friction to actually do the task is basically zero. So the absolute crucial point here is that we have got to abandon this flawed, kind of moralistic model of willpower. Willpower isn't some inherent character trait. Actually, it's more like a finite battery. It's a cognitive and metabolic resource that just gets depleted as you make decisions throughout the day. Instead of relying on something that inevitably runs completely dry by 2 p.m. when someone magically offers you a glazed donut, we have to embrace environmental architecture. We need to build systems. And this brings us to a really cool concept derived directly from systems engineering. Architecture beats discipline every single time. We can actually learn a ton here from Workspace software like MyDrop AI. When they looked at social media teams, they found that relying on just team discipline to not post to the wrong account always fails when the pressure is on. To prevent errors, you have to architect the environment to make the wrong choice literally impossible. We need to apply this exact same lockdown approach to our daily biological habits. Just like those social media tools suffer from what they call context bleeding, where every single client profile is accessible all at once, our brains suffer massive cognitive fatigue when our environment forces us to constantly make health decisions. If you have to consciously choose whether to work out, what to eat, and when to sleep every single day, you are just endlessly cycling through options. You're going to get severe decision fatigue, and eventually you'll just choose the path of least resistance. We really have to lock our context. To bypass this entire decision bottleneck, we've got to apply what is known as the first half principle. Basically, this means automating the start of your day, which then dictates your biological and behavioral success for the rest of it. That first half of the day serves as this absolutely critical window where your behavioral systems are either firmly established or they're completely lost. So how do we actually build this? It starts with a highly structured morning routine, grounded in circadian biology and Hinge Health recommendations. We're looking at 3 foundational inputs: circadian light and hydration, cognitive offloading, and low-intensity movement. Step 1 is super simple but biologically profound. Right when you wake up, spending 20 to 30 minutes in bright outdoor light while hydrating completely jumpstarts your metabolic engine. This light exposure actively suppresses your melatonin production and optimizes your cortisol curve for the whole day. And pairing that with water immediately restores your cellular electrolytes after a long night of mild dehydration. Then we move to step 2, which is cognitive offloading. The rule here is empty before you fill. Before you even think about consuming caffeine, and absolutely before you check any digital devices that actively hijack your prefrontal cortex, you need to clear the mental clutter. Just doing some longhand writing, maybe 2 or 3 pages of stream of consciousness thoughts, drastically lowers your cognitive stress. It protects your brain from being shoved into a reactive, hijacked state by your smartphone the second you get out of bed. Finally, step 3, integrating just 10 to 15 minutes of low-intensity movement or stretching. According to Hinge Health, this early movement restores joint lubrication, enhances your blood circulation, and gently releases epinephrine and norepinephrine to give you this really nice natural energy. It sets an automated physical baseline for the day, and it doesn't require some massive, exhausting effort right out of the gate. Now, the absolute secret sauce to making those 3 steps happen automatically is designing your physical environment. You literally shift the cognitive load off of your mind and onto your surroundings. Keep the bedroom cool, like between 60 and 67 degrees. Heavily restrict blue light. Use sensory cues like scented candles or weighted blankets to make waking up feel like an actual indulgence rather than a terrible chore. And try using the Eisenhower matrix the night before to organize your priorities so you aren't wasting precious morning energy figuring out what's actually urgent. You're just making the healthy choice the easiest choice. This whole approach is perfectly mirrored in endurance cycling by something called the century ride principle. When cyclists do a 100-mile ride, the golden rule is to ride the first half like a warm-up, conserving your energy for the real test at the end. I mean, if you burn all your glycogen early on, you're going to crash hard. By treating the first half of your day with this same steady, manageable, automated effort, you deeply protect your highly limited physical and cognitive energy for the tough stuff that inevitably comes later. So, with your morning on autopilot and your energy conserved, we naturally transition to the second half of the day. And this is where we confront those exercise guidelines that, remember, 77% of aging adults completely fail to meet. Now that you actually have the energy in the tank, how do we execute physical training in a way that actually sticks? Well, the ACSM's cardio race trial reveals a pretty mind-blowing stat. If you only have 1 hour to work out, replacing half of your aerobic exercise with resistance training actually yields a much higher long-term compliance rate. People who did a 50-50 split of cardio and weights had an 84 to 85% compliance rate over a year, compared to just 77% for those doing only aerobic exercise. Adding weights literally makes the habit more sustainable. And while both approaches absolutely reduce your risk for cardiovascular disease, that 50-50 split is crucial. Resistance training improves lean body mass and muscular strength. With the rapid rise of muscle loss from our modern sedentary lifestyles and even from the side effects of popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs, maintaining that lean mass is essential for healthy longevity, not just an extended lifespan. Because you don't just want to live longer, right? You want to live functionally. And as Dr. Loretta DiPietro so perfectly points out, it is never too late. ACSM data shows that multi-component physical activity, which means mixing aerobic, strength, and balance training, reduces the risk of fall-related injuries in older adults by up to 40%. Physiological decline is absolutely not a guaranteed life sentence. You can restore function, strength, and mobility by applying these systems regardless of how old you are right now. You know, this entire concept of structuring the first half of your day to protect the second half, it brilliantly parallels Bob Buford's life philosophy in his incredible book, Halftime. Because when you really think about it, what we do biologically in our mornings very closely mirrors what we do across the entire span of our lives. Buford elegantly illustrates that the first half of life is a quest for success, but the second is a quest for significance. The skills, the discipline, and the biological systems we meticulously construct in our first half, whether we're talking about the morning of our day or the early decades of our lives, they provide the absolute foundation required to pursue true significance, vibrant health, and authenticity in our second half. So, I'm going to leave you with this to chew on. How are you designing your first half to protect your second half? Are you going to keep miserably white-knuckling your way through the day on fleeting willpower? Or will you embrace environmental architecture and engineer the systems today that guarantee your health, your mobility, and your legacy tomorrow? The architecture is completely in your hands.